Hi, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Martha Lane Fox. I am President of the British Chambers of Commerce and Chancellor of the Open University. I've said it before and I'm going to say it again, the two best jobs in the world. And I have to say, I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and I'm thrilled to welcome our guest today because I am not a frustrated sports person because I had an accident that will forever stop my sports future, but I'm really interested in the motivations around sports. So I'm thrilled to welcome Bryan Redpath, and you are Director of Rugby at London Scottish, but you are also London Scottish, if I said that right, yes.
Yes.
But you're many more things beside, as well as I know a very famous rugby player. So I must apologise because I'm not a rugby aficionado, but I know for many of our listeners, they'll be like, oh, Bryan Redpath, this is very exciting. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Martha. It's great to be here.
We're going to talk about lots of things, but a lot around kind of career transitions and kind of pivoting, to use a tech word that people do in their careers at moments. And you've done that in spades, but we'll come back to it in a minute. Just tell us a bit about what Rugby London Scottish is, because I don't think people might know, and a bit about what your current role is. Then we can...
Yeah, London Scottish are a team based out of Richmond that play in the Championship, which is the one below the professional Premiership in England. The Championship is made up of semi-professional teams and professional teams. And ultimately they are competing to try and achieve the winning sort of opportunity to go into the Premiership, but there is many regulations and restrictions to allow you into the Premiership. And if you don't have these facilities in place, you can't get there. But primarily, London Scottish were a full professional team that played in the top league. I was approached a few years back to come in and give a kind of an overview to where they are and where they would like to go. We bridged that crossover really between some players at the age of 27 and realising they may not make a Premiership starter or an international player. And that transition into business, whether that being through our sponsors or connections in the City of London, to say, well, actually, you can do both and still train a Tuesday and a Thursday and play on a Saturday against professional players and still have that little bit of a dream, but make the transition into the business world where you have 30 years left to work. Whereas in rugby terms, you get to 30 and then you're looking at the end process. Whereas you hit 30 as a business person, that's probably your peak time to kick on.
Yeah, I think that was probably my error. We started our business lastminute.com when I was 25. And I think maybe if I'd done it a bit later, I'd have been a lot more successful. I look at numbers of stats around people who start businesses later in their careers. They're always much more successful. But maybe we can come back to that. What I really want to talk about and understand, both from your personal experience and also the work you do, is just around these career changes and how important this is in the economy and how we can help people make those moves. Particularly, I guess, as Chancellor of the OU, I see this all the time when I'm lucky enough to do the degree ceremonies, which are some of the best things I get to do in my working life. People come across the stage and they've got these stories they're desperate to share. They may have been a social worker for 10 years, they've worked for 4 years on the degree while doing social work, and now they've got up into the next level of social work. Or maybe they're even switching to do something totally different. But it's always people who want to either just continue to learn through that lifelong learning or make a bit of a shift. Tell me some of the things you've seen and how you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I made a big
Oh,
decision,
yes.
a big decision in 2017. I was coaching at Yorkshire Carnegie at that time, and I had been in professional coaching for 13 years and obviously played 10 years prior to that professionally. And I'd got to a stage where I kind of lost myself a little bit. And then I was sat at a rugby event in Leeds, and I got an approach from a big foreign exchange company in London called Afex at the time. And they were looking to set up a sporting sector. How do sports people transfer money back and forward? And I was like, I know my background was I left school young. I was a joiner for 8 years. I went self-employed, then turned professional, and then went to coaching. And I never really looked at taking any breath in that time. It just everything flowed. And then this was the first real decision for me to go into something totally different, put a suit on, go into an office in the centre of Manchester, and work with people that knew me but didn't necessarily know me, knew who I was. I was just a figure. And that was probably the biggest part, that the challenge that lay for me was to say, well, where can I fit in? But what I did know was understand sport. I understand teams. I understand individuals. So what I wanted to try and achieve was just say, well, use my experiences to understand the people I work with, learn really quickly, make sure I do my research, and then try and take all the good of the rugby and the sport and team and the management side, but be willing to listen, because at the age I was at 47, I think at the time, was I willing to listen to a 24-year-old that had the academic background or the economic background
Mhm.
to be telling me what I should be doing? And now that's generally my own ego that was going to be damaged. But ultimately, I went into that because I understood the image rights contracts, commercial contracts for players,
Yes.
prize money, how they were winning and transferring it.
Yes.
But the biggest challenge was just being in an office all day
Yes.
when you've never had that.
Yeah.
And even then, and I never went to university, so I didn't understand. I certainly know that my son definitely doesn't go to a class all day
Mhm.
at uni, but going into an office, and I found that the most challenging part. Different people, different agendas,
Yes.
and who was my direct boss? Who was going to be giving me a challenge, or this is your job description, and I'm going to be there for you?
Mhm.
Because I didn't necessarily always see that, because you sink or swim and you're in, crack on.
Mhm.
Or if you put your hand up too many times, you're taking up too much of their time. But I always felt, that was the bit that I felt was missing when I first went into it.
Yes.
I didn't know enough about the job. I didn't know enough about the industry. So my prep going into that was quite short and quick because I was
Mhm.
still coaching.
Mhm.
And I think that was probably where I probably maybe should have done more research, insight to what I was going into, and then be able to deal with that emotionally, because it was such a swing for me. Um, so yeah, it was a massive change, but one that over each year has become easier. The London Scottish connection was more of a consultancy role
Right.
within the foreign exchange company, Jackson Swiss Partners, who I work with now.
Yes.
So that was a changeover, but I'm still learning, and I don't think I'll stop learning until well, I don't think I will. It took me a long time to master sport and master teams and master people. And that'll take me a long time to master so many different people, because we're all got different agendas and different roles.
Well, I think you've just expressed a lot of things there, and I think you've also said that you've made this big shift in 2017. But actually, I would argue before that you revealed that you've been a joiner, then you'd been a professional sports person, and then you've been a coach, and then you went into business. So arguably, you've made quite a few transitions before that, actually. So it strikes me talking to you, it's just about that mindset of being open to different ideas and seeing where different directions go.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, Martha, I was obviously not the biggest in stature and having.
I don't know what you mean. I've got a 6'3" person in
Exactly.
front of me.
So yeah, no, I realized really early on in my career that it was never going to be about me. So I then went.
How? How did you do that? Because I think that's a really important business
Well, I
insight.
understood what part of a team I was going to
Yeah.
be, and to
And do you
be.
think that's true? Sorry to interrupt you, but do you think that's true of good sports people always? Do you think you have to recognize how to be part of a team?
In a team sport, because there're going to come times where the most talented people will show that, but when they're off their talent and they're not on song,
Mhm.
what do they need? Their teammates to help them.
Yeah.
What I knew was I was never going to be the rock star,
Mhm.
but the rock star always needs something to help him perform. So I knew that my skills, excuse me, my skills were always going to be needed in a team environment. So I just honed my skills. I practiced what I was going to be really good at,
Mhm.
and I stayed being really good at them. I never became average at them all. I
Mhm.
tried to upskill the
Mhm.
the weaker parts of my game. I put on 15.
Again, back to me being a rugby novice. Tell me what that is in reality. Like when you say get
physicality,
okay.
I put on 15 kilograms from my first cap to my last cap, from 93 to 2003. I increased my size
Uh-huh.
by 15 kilograms, so 2 stone, just to compete in the physicality of rugby. But that didn't mean I went out to compete against you physically.
Well, that's lucky because I think you wrestled me to the ground in
But
about half a
I
second.
quickly understood that moving a big guy around, getting
Yeah.
up off the floor quicker,
That was
putting
a
them
real
in comfortable
advantage. Yeah.
positions, be closing their space down so
Yeah.
quickly, being fitter and being stronger from my position, but making sure that my fitness levels didn't drop, because when you drop fitness levels,
When you get
the
bigger.
first thing that goes is your mental strength.
Yes.
So you make mental decisions that are poor because you're fatigued.
Yes.
So I kind of understood that as a small guy playing with big brothers in the back garden, and then the game itself has many different sizes, whether that's people positionally. So I knew then that I had a skill set that could keep them in the game,
Mm-hmm.
but I had to understand them first. So the more I understood about them, which was part of the team thing,
Yes.
socializing, walking back from the changing rooms, good days, bad days, picking up little traits that they liked or disliked, and then said, right, well, I can help them with that. And that if I help them,
Yep.
it's going to make my job easier. And ultimately, that's what scrum half, my position in that midfield linchpin kind of area was. If this team's got to function, I need to be in the game more than anybody else. And I need you to be in the right positions more times than not. If you're not, there's going to be reasons why. I just needed to understand them and then make sure, as a captain of kind of every team I played for, was be that kind of person and be the same as you. So you could come and ask me a question. I wasn't any better because I was a Scotland captain than I was as a young player coming through or an old retiring player. We're all the same. But I've got to share my knowledge with you and then willing to come to your level and say, right, I'll help you get up here. You can't get there without me, rather than just expect young or less experienced people just to jump to that level. And that's the same in a boardroom level. The biggest people don't always share their knowledge because of the numbers of people that are putting their hands up to take that job.
Yes.
And in sport, there's only 2 or 3 lads that are putting their hand up
Yeah.
every year.
I mean, I think you've, again, just brilliantly explained why, to be honest, I feel like sometimes I go to kind of particularly tech conferences and the star speaker is always a sports person. Anthony Joshua or Lewis Hamilton is always like, wheel out a sports person because then they can tell this business crowd something.
Yeah.
But the problem I perceive sometimes is that people get kind of a bit overwhelmed that they've got Lewis Hamilton or Anthony Joshua, whoever the hell it is on the stage, and they're not really listening to what that person is saying. And what you've just explained about leadership, being the person that doesn't always have to answer all the questions, but is the person that people can come to and you help work that thing through, and realizing that you are part of that team. There are so many lessons, aren't there? Why do you think that you had that mindset, and where did that come from? And how can you help people encourage
Well,
themselves
I think
to have
it
it?
goes right back to, as I said earlier, when I knew I was what I was. I never tried to be somebody else. And that was stature, that was
Yes.
whatever it may be. And weirdly, it comes back to things like if you're a female and you think it's all about looks, I've got to look a certain way to be accepted in this office.
Yep.
Now that's wrong. Or in this changing room.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what it is. It's the same thing in life. And
Yep.
I felt that the most important part was just be you. Make sure you work on yourself more than you work on others. And that's you have to be selfish. So how you sleep, how you eat, how you recover. That doesn't mean you can't be jack of all trades. So I loved a party. I loved a good night. I was part of the boys that were out late and doing the dancing and jumping around. I wanted to be
With
part
that, we
of that.
need to see. Now that we film podcasts, you can have a little. We can have a little dance.
Yeah, we can have a dance off later. But no, that for me is really important. You show that you've got humanity. You're humble with everyone, and you give time for everyone. Not everyone has been as fortunate as me, but I have sacrificed a lot to be there.
Yes.
So you must make sacrifices in yourself before someone else tells you, because you don't always agree with someone else tells you. But you must be able to look in the mirror and go, that's my problem. And I have some regrets. I probably shouldn't have had the beers that I had at certain times. But that's life. I'm not going to go back. I learned a lot from that, and I can learn from it now. I can still at 52 learn from that now. And that's the most important part for me is I'm willing to learn about myself now. It's uncomfortable sometimes because I didn't go through the academic background. But I do believe from a young age, the people you're around the most is your parents.
Yes.
You
And
spend
what did
time.
your parents do? Tell me a picture about what home life for you
They were
was.
initial dairy farmers. And then my dad went into a haulage contracting business, so
Okay.
livestock. So it was never a glamorous lifestyle. Cleaning out lorries with cows.
He ran the business.
Yeah, had his own business. My older brother Andrew went into it. Playing, weirdly, some of the biggest things that I did learn from was my 2 older brothers that we all played in the same team together.
Okay.
My middle brother Craig, we played at school together.
So you're like the Kelseys, because obviously they're very famous right now for playing both in the NFL.
Yeah,
So you're,
yes.
you're the Scottish Kelseys.
Yeah, and there was a lot of brothers at that time, the Hastings, the Brewsters,
Right.
the Calders. So yes, we all played in the same team, same club team. My middle brother and myself, Craig, both toured with Scotland together. I learnt a lot from them. And it wasn't always what to do, it was what not to do. And that's really difficult because they probably didn't see it that way, because I was a wee younger brother that was probably, I was told I would never play international sport, and I played 60 times. Craig, he got 1 cap, my older brother didn't get any. But
Are you still speaking?
oh yeah, just occasionally. But I never felt that they needed to, I toured with Craig, and I learned little things from him that I thought, nah, I need to be, and I don't want to react like that, or I don't want to. And it was never through lack of caring; it was just through lack of understanding and the pressure that came with that. I probably dealt with the pressure or the expectation better based on what I saw them do.
So I've heard that happiness is about your expectation versus reality.
Yeah,
So if you think that you're going to be incredibly good at something and you just consistently don't quite get there, then you're fundamentally going to be unhappy. Whereas a bit what I'm hearing is that because the expectation wasn't perhaps on you, you were perhaps happier because you
yeah,
were going for things and they were working out. Does that?
100% rings
Yeah.
true. Especially when I look at many sportsmen or many people, they've come out with this dream
Yes.
to be there, top of the pile. And how many people reach the
They're
top
gonna
of the
get there,
pile
yeah.
every year? It is a tiny, tiny percentage. It doesn't mean you can't have that as a dream,
Yep.
but don't put that much pressure on
Yes.
yourself that you fail, and you fail once at one thing, you then think you're a failure.
Yes.
Now, failure is something you have to have tried it to have failed, and then you come back and try and learn from your errors and your mistakes. Don't see failing once as something. If you continually fail, it is your problem.
Yep.
If you're doubling up on errors, then it's your fault because you can't see the wood from the trees. All you're looking at is your vision. Sometimes just going back and having a mentor or a trusted person. It may be a family member, it may be a coach, it may be just someone you bumped into and you've listened to. Because as I say, what you listen to is far, far greater than what you can share.
But again and again, you're coming back to something which you haven't explicitly said, but it's the same thing, which is just being open to lifelong learning, being aware enough to know that you just need to keep not knowing anything and appreciating that you don't know anything.
Yeah. And when you do have a bad day, and I'll go back to certain times in my career, quarterfinal World Cup 2003, I was captain, I had a bad day, I played poorly. And I knew that the players looked up to me. And that was the first game of the tournament. And I was like, oh no. And I knew then I couldn't dwell on that. I couldn't sit there and feel sorry for myself because I'd already pre-planned my retirement. I was needing surgery and I was struggling with injuries, and young boys behind me were flying behind me and queuing up. But that game, I knew I had to then put my hand up in the media, in the changing room, and be willing to be dropped and say, well, I had a bad day. But you can't have a bad day when you've only got 10 days a year to be bad at. There will be a day that's got to rock up and you've got to have a bad day. And you hope that you've got enough money in the bank to allow them to give you another shot to redeem yourself. And I was lucky enough to have that.
Yeah.
Many people don't get that.
Yeah.
But how you react to that is where
That's
you
in
go
your-
back
you
to.
have that
You
agency,
have to
yeah.
go back to where your roots are, to where you are, to where's comfortable, to see where along the line that you've taken the wrong step. And some of that wrong step is just because a little bit too arrogant, a little bit complacent. You've slackened on your rehab, you've slackened on your fitness, you've slackened on your analysis you're doing, or you've went overkill and you've lost the happy side of what it is. You've lost the enjoyment of it all. Because when we start doing something we don't enjoy, we never ever do our best.
Yeah. Well, I think that resonates very deeply, and I'm sure it does with listeners. I guess just to bring it back to kind of the business world for a minute and that big transition you made in 2017, a couple of things I'd love your perspective on. Firstly, sometimes when we have these conversations, and I feel this as a not very successful entrepreneur, this might be in the gift of people that are, able to choose the work they do, able to go off and start a business, able to aim to be some of the best in their field as you were in your rugby career. For a lot of people, work is not that choice, is it? It's much more mundane in a way. And I don't mean the jobs are, and I'm not being disparaging, but being realistic. You have to earn money, you have to look after your family. You live in an area where there's not that much choice of work. They might be thinking, listening to us, what are these guys on? It's just like, that's not the world I operate in.
Reality.
How do you think about, the different, I guess, ways that you can approach your work, whatever it might be, from what you've learned?
Yeah, I think every business has the exact same challenges to be how do they define success? The reality part that you're on, we discussed a little bit earlier, like what's realistic for the business. It may be great one year, it may be set higher and higher each time, as long as you can operate in the means that you are. And I always see, when I've seen it in businesses now, they get one good year and they get carried away and start to grow the business before it can actually stand on its own 2 feet. stand on your own 2 feet, be smart, look back internally before you keep growing externally. Get wise people around you, people you trust, even if you don't know them that well, but you know what they are. Their characters are so important. Whether it's you've signed them off the back of a CV or employed them off the back of a CV, or of their character that you just feel this person has the ability to adjust, adapt to the challenges that they will have because you're too busy trying to grow the business and bring in investment and look for new business. Wherever you get dragged off, you may get dragged off mentally just dealing with other things, but you want to have that trusted thing. And I think SME markets, new businesses, established businesses, the most important thing is keep doing what you're good at before you start going into something you're going to learn about. Doesn't mean you can't. Just do it wisely and do it smartly, and don't take 5 steps when you've missed out 2, 3, and 4.
Yep. There's
1
no
to 3, 1
shortcuts.
to 2, and you may have to go up and down to get success. But just be a little bit. Just sometimes take that half an hour a week, an hour a week, just to reflect a little bit back on what was good, who is good for the business, who isn't so good, and why they're not so good. If they're not good in there, are they disruptive because they want to take it another way? They want to show you something new, which means you have to listen to people. Or they're not good because they're stepping over somebody else's toes and we're shrinking what we've got is good.
Yeah.
So I think every business just needs to look within rather than always look to grow without. You grow within, you get strong within with the group, add to the group, add smartly. And if it isn't work, be man enough or female is strong enough to go, I recruited that person, it's my issue, it's my fault, no one else's. Cannot blame someone else down the food chain to say you employed the wrong person. That's your fault. Well, you as an MD, a CEO, a chairman, whatever you are in that business, make sure that your experiences filter through everyone to the cleaner.
Yes.
The cleaner has an important part because that makes you happy when you come in the door.
100%.
But the man in the boardroom gives everybody confidence. He reassures. Or the female in the board, doesn't matter who it is for me, the person that's in charge must be willing to be part of everybody.
I made so many mistakes recruiting in my career. When you were saying that about owning the decisions that you made, I mean, that's where you can't hide as an entrepreneur, I guess, because the buck has to stop with you. But I'm just going to share one quick anecdote. We were expanding into France. We bought this big French travel company. They were furious that these kind of upstart young English people had bought a big French travel company. This was back in the very early days of the internet. I sound like I'm stuck in the past, don't I? Anyway, I'm just going to tell you this. We hired this guy. It was a massive kerfuffle to recruit him. Ran a huge agency from travel. He was like very kind of, but we thought we need this grown up in the business. He's going to give us credibility in France. First day he arrives, I knew it was an absolute freaking disaster because he came into the office. He looked around. He said, where am I going to put my desk? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, I brought my mahogany desk from my office in France. I was like, oh my God, what have I done? This is appalling, the most terrible culture clash. So obviously I had to own that and we had to part ways very quickly because it was never going to work. So it's just, I always go back to that guy, that
the
poor guy.
respect you get for doing that and admitting that.
Maybe, not from him, but anyway.
Oh, he will never be happy with it, but the bigger picture of what you willing to take on the chin and go, that's my fault.
I'm still really thinking about the comment you said when I'd never been in an office before working and I, putting on a suit and all of those things.
Yeah.
That, I think a lot of us kind of empathize with that because of things that have happened over the last few years and working life has shifted. Not for everybody. Some people don't have that choice. Some people have to be either in a factory, in a frontline role in whatever capacity. But lots of people do get a bit more choice about work and so on. How have you found that and kind of that bit of the pivot? Because that's aside from, not rocking up in your shorts anymore.
Yeah, the team environment I loved. I loved being in around a team. I loved watching other players in my position and trying to watch them, see what they're good at, how they do things, what do they do different. I was always kind of trying to steal little bits of information from them. And then when you move into the team in the office format, I like to be in a room with people. I like to interact. I like to understand. If I want to ask a question, I want to see the expression on your face when you answer it to me, then I know it's genuine. So I want that honest. And if that feedback is really good, and if it's genuine to me, I'm going to take a lot out of that. over the phone's different. Over a Zoom call, Teams call, Google Meet call, whatever it is a total different environment.
Yeah.
If I'm looking for new business, will I win the new business based on the relationship, how we are face to face? I think we will.
Yeah.
Based on other ways, whether it's just factual and business relation,
Yeah.
you know, we can do a better rate. Great. That's simple.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you're going to trust me for a long time. So I think, you know, we look at COVID, we look at our coming out of Brexit into COVID, into many different things, and elections coming up.
Yeah.
Ultimately, some people really love their own life at home and they're very comfortable and they still do the same level of work that is on the job description. Others do need maybe 1 or 2 or 3 days in an office. Some of them just love being in an office, getting up, purpose of the day, shower, walk to work, get out, work, go out for lunch, come back. If that feels normal, normal's good and change is good. But as long as you can find the way that's right for you and your business.
And so do you feel now that you're at peace with the office environment? Do you,
Yeah,
do
and
you like it?
I'm
What's
pretty
your work,
lucky.
What's your working pattern?
Yeah, so it's a bit different. I get up around 6:30. I do a cold plunge in the garden for 6 minutes.
Oh, I'd love to do that. I get up
every
about
morning
a bit earlier
if I
than that,
can.
but I would love a cold plunge bath.
Yep, so I sit in that. So
Yeah.
friends of mine who has a Mayo master, Joe Gray, and his lovely wife Lottie. Yeah, I've gone into that a little bit more of coming out of play, and you have a lot of injuries, so
Yeah.
body's really important, and it feels achy a lot too much. So I do that, and then ultimately, in the moment, because I have the dual role with the Jackson Swiss Partners and London Scottish,
Yes.
I can work remotely wherever that is. We have an office in Yorkshire. I work a little bit with them. I have sometimes an office in Clapham. But ultimately, I want to be out meeting clients. I want to be at events. I want to be in and around people. That's where I've always been. The office side and putting a suit on, still, I'm more comfortable with that now. Got used to the blisters
I
on the
don't like it,
shoes.
just for the record. I
But
really
you don't
like
have
it.
to wear ties anymore, so everyone's a bit more relaxed. But yeah, I'm very fortunate, and with London Scottish, I'm still around team. I'm around people that turn up in their suits because they've been in the city,
Yeah.
and I know how difficult it is for them to have come from a pro environment to work in an office, sit down, and their hip flexors are sore, their back's sore, their shoulders, and suddenly I'm asking them to go out and play against a professional team who train every day, get loads of time off, and their transition is there. But don't lose the love of the something that you've been. And if you have the love for something, now whether that's work or whether that's being in an office, just try and make sure that you keep that. I think the minute you take that away from you, you're losing 50% of what you're good at.
Yes, I completely agree. I just keep reflecting that that still feels like a privilege for lots of people who don't have that opportunity to do something that they really love. They just have to do something to survive.
And again, everybody works, but again, I was privileged to play sports, so I don't see it as a job. Never have, never will.
No, I guess that.
So that side of it, that's why I loved it. Will I ever? Absolutely, I love being a normal working guy. I'm not sure. Did I love being a joiner on the building site in the middle of winter? No, I didn't. But it was what I did and what many others done. Going to an office, we all have to do it. It's part of life. It's what makes us. It's what pays the bills. So we have to do it. If you can make it a better environment with the people that you're with, you'll have good days and bad days, like we all do. But we do have a choice to make it good and bad for ourselves. So when we make the choice to be unhappy, well, then make the choice to move out of that and find happiness somewhere. You can't always think it's all about money, which it does, sadly, because it does run around that we have to have enough money to
You're
live.
absolutely right. We have that in our agency. We've just got a minute left, but before we go, because you've made those extraordinary pivots, I think you've made more than perhaps you think you have. What's your kind of closing piece of advice for somebody that wants to transition out, wants to find that happiness? How would you give them a kind of bit of motivation or inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, Martha, I think the biggest thing is know what you're good at, know what you want to do. And once you find that, go and get it. Stop worrying about making mistakes or not being accepted or being a little bit different. Like, just be really good at what you are and love that. And if you will get so much happiness from being good at what you are rather than trying to be someone else. Just be good at what you are, and life will dish its cards for you when it's there, but don't go chasing something that may not be realistic and achievable.
I love that. And I would add in, as Chancellor of the OU, our motto is to live and learn. And I think that you're an absolute visualization and manifestation of that. You've just got an incredible energy around you about constantly learning and not bringing too much ego to anything. So I really thank you for sharing your story. I've loved our conversation. We could talk for hours more. Unfortunately, the lights are all flashing at me. So I just want to say thank you so much, Bryan. And thank you for listening to our podcast. I'm Martha Lane Fox, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.